Thank you, Senator Sanders. Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Chairman Bernanke. I'd like to first follow up a little bit on what Vice Chairman Brady was talking about on the European situation. You know, with all the issues relative to our economy, we have some modicum of control, you and us up here, of monetary policy and fiscal policy. But I think one of the frustrations is that we don't have any control over Europe's decisions relative to their current problems and crises, but yet it can affect us here. To what extent would a default in Greece or in some of the other countries where that sovereign debt has those holders of that sovereign debt have some loss, is our financial system sufficiently protected from that kind of default in Greece and perhaps another country over there would not impact our financial system at least?
Well, first, it would depend the conditions of the default. If it were done in a way that was where there were very substantial firewalls, backstops, protections, done in a very orderly and controlled way, then that would be one thing. If it was disorderly, unplanned, and disruptive, that would be a very different matter. As I said to Congressman Brady, the direct exposures of our banks to Greece are minimal. But if there were a disorderly default, which led to, for example, runs or defaults of other sovereigns or stresses on European banks, it would create a huge amount of financial volatility globally that would have a very substantial impact not only on our financial system but on our economy. So it's a very, very serious risk if that were to happen. And that's why it's extremely important that the Europeans continue along the lines that they have been on, which is to try to address that situation.
I understand that, as you say, if it affects their economy and demand there is reduced, that obviously affects the global economy, and there's not that much, I would perceive, and if you disagree, say so, that we can do about that. But you obviously are taking all the steps you believe you can and that are prudent in order to create a firewall around our financial sector. Is there anything we should be doing in that regard, meaning Congress?
Unfortunately, as you pointed out at the beginning, we're kind of innocent bystanders here. We, the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, and others have, been consulting with and been kept informed by our European colleagues. I am persuaded that they are very much aware of the risks, associated with the situation. They are very much committed to trying to address it. The problems there are not really economic. They're essentially political, because what they're trying to do is find solutions that will be acceptable to 17 different countries, which, as you can imagine, is very difficult. So I don't have any good suggestions other than to support their efforts and to continue to push them to move aggressively to put this behind us, because even the current situation of just ongoing uncertainty has been, I think, a negative for our economy.
Just switching gears for a moment, you mentioned housing, and which I agree is one of the primary elements of the economy, that we cannot grow without housing, cannot grow robustly without housing being a part of that, and we never go into recession without them contributing. What can and or should we be doing at this point in order to aid that sector of the economy specifically? Should we be looking at a new system of housing finance past Fannie and Freddie to replace Fannie and Freddie as they currently exist? Should we be looking at the foreclosure situation? What are your thoughts on that?
This is, as you point out, a very important issue. I would just urge Congress to look carefully at what might be done. There are a lot of possibilities. One issue is the treatment of real estate-owned REO. As you know, one of the problems is such a big overhang of foreclosed and distressed properties. Would there be programs that would allow REO to be converted to rental or to rent-to-own, for example, some way to manage the REO overhang? A second issue is refinancing. There are a lot of barriers to refinancing, including the fact that people who are underwater have a great deal of difficulty refinancing. Would it be possible to help that happen? You mentioned Fannie and Freddie. I think for the near term, it will be difficult to create a full-fledged alternative to Fannie and Freddie, who are currently now the basic source of all securitization in the mortgage market. But to the extent that Congress is able to lay out a clear framework or a clear path to a new housing finance system, I think that would create some certainty and maybe would allow some of the private sector securitization activities to resume. So I think there are things that can be done, and I'm sure that many other things could be done, and I urge you, I know you have a special interest in this area, I would urge you to think about what Congress could do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Representative Campbell. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman